when you talk about quarterbacks and what they're getting paid, I believe they're only just kind of really worth how good the O line is. It's just like you could pay a guy the most money, Patrick Mahomes, the most money to a quarterback for a team. But if his O line, let's say he wasn't on the Chiefs, he was on a team with the poor O line, you think he's going to have the same success? I mean, we saw the Super Bowl where his offensive line was just terrible. I mean, would they do a field goal? Everyone thought they were about to beat the Bucks, and it's just like he couldn't do anything. This dude was running before the ball was like snapped, and we saw how that affected him. We consider Mahomes to be, the most talented, like you said, Bossman, arguably, the greatest that we've seen at the position. So O-line's really big, and not just one guy, just as a unit. So, I mean, how do you guys feel about just their overall production and value to the game, just as it pertains to not just the quarterback position, but obviously the running back position too, because you have poor O-line not moving the ball either, through the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings about that because, you were right. Mahomes was running for his life out there against Tampa a few years ago. But to the same beat, when has Burrow really had a good offensive line? You know what I mean? So, I mean, I think, I don't have it in front of me, but I think Burrow was by far one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the past like decade. And sometimes I think sacks are a quarterback stat. Um, but that's a different topic. I could talk for hours on that.
It
Um,
for sure is. If you look at guys in the past like Cam Newton, he took a lot of hits they didn't have to. Was that his offensive line's fault or was that on him as the quarterback? I think a lot of it was on him, and he would say that too. I think so.
watch some of that mid 2000s like Russell Wilson, and it's like he's in his prime scrambling for his life, but he's also getting dropped 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage every now and again.
Facts.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the big uglies. That's what I love to call them. It gets ugly in there. It gets intense. It's a lot of battles. As you can see, I'm getting excited right now just talking about it. My body is developing into a big ugly. I got to control that because I'm supposed to be like quarterback builds or wide receiver build. Now I'm turning into a big ugly. But I
Hey
mean,
man, join the club.
yeah, no, I will not. I will absolutely not. I'm a tight end right now, linebacker. That's where we're maxing out at. But we have to look at Pro Football Focus. Look at the offensive lines that have been the most successful. The Philadelphia Eagles went to the Super Bowl. They're number one. Kansas City ranked number three. The Dallas Cowboys are ranked number six. Obviously, we're going to talk about them, but we obviously see a difference. Boss man mentioned that earlier. Terrence Steele went down, or he mentioned it off the air. Terrence Steele goes down. Cowboys are shuffling to put somebody, replace that guy.
Couldn't move
And
the
then
ball.
Zach Martin goes down, and we see what happens there, especially in San Francisco. So, but a large or one of the really strong pieces of support for the offensive line, being very important. The Detroit Lions, man, they finally were able to get a quarterback in Jared Goff. When Jared Goff was over with the Rams, he's getting sacked here, there, everywhere. Now he goes to Detroit. Detroit's ranked number five, and we see the resurgence of that offense. Obviously, you have Dan Campbell. You got guys like Amon St. Brown. They had DeAndre Swift in that running back room, but that offensive line doesn't get talked about enough. You got guys like Ty. We don't even know anybody on that offensive line, and yet we see the Detroit Lions. Everybody's like, oh, Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, but who's keeping in the running backs? But who's opening up these lanes for these guys to run through? Who's giving Jared Goff time to find Amon-Ra St. Brown? You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
offensive line is a pivotal piece. What are you gonna say?
Well, no, I was gonna say you're like, who are these guys on the lines? But they invested, in free agency and the draft. They went
Yeah,
out, they got Sewell early. Taylor Decker's been there for a while. Ragnow, that offensive line ain't no slouch.
I think they could win that division, the Lions. I wouldn't be surprised if they won the division. Like everyone says, oh, the Vikings won, what they won 12, 13 games. I think they could, yeah, I think the Lions could somehow stop that. And they're not like, that into themselves either. From how their coach is, like they're not like, oh, we've got all these pieces. We think no, they're not even talking about that. They're
Yeah, I
just
mean, and if you look at that run that they had towards the end of the season, I mean, they could
golf.
easily win over 10 games this season.
Golf threw for like 15 touchdowns and zero interceptions on like I guess the last quarter or something of the season. Like that's crazy. Like they just
Yeah.
figured it out as a team. What they needed to do.
But
if you ever have an argument with someone and you want to talk about how important coaching is, I think you look at Detroit and Jacksonville last year. Look at the turnaround that those teams have had. You know, there's memes out there all the time. It's like, you know, if the world went into a zombie apocalypse, who are we going to have lead, you know, everyone? And it's a toss up between Mike Tomlin and Dan Campbell. Like that team out there will run through a brick wall for that guy.
And
Yeah.
Dan Campbell has the Detroit Lions that entire
They're locked
city
in.
charged up.
Yeah,
Double fist in his fucking coffee and shit.
Everyone there is dialed
They're
in.
locked in, but no. Honestly though, football is won in the trenches though with the line. So I think the line is definitely 100% important. Without that line, the quarterback I don't think will really be much. Although I will say shout out Joe Burrow because man, he made it all the way to the Super Bowl with a terrible offensive line. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. But outside of that, I mean, there's always an exception to every rule. So there was your exception. But other than that, you need an offensive line because football is won right there in the trenches. It's like protecting your mother out there. That's why
100%.